Welcome to all participants who joined our webinar. People are continuing to join. Our webinar held by the British Council is entitled Student Assessment, Encouraging, Not Dispiriting. I am Julia Soper, Manager of Education Project at British Council, and today I will moderate this. Let me remind you that recently the British Council launched a series of webinars on modern approaches to teaching, where teachers from Ukraine and UK will share their practical strategies and success stories in using assessment approaches. These webinars are part of the Higher Education Excellence Program that is implemented by the British Council in partnership with Education HE and Ukrainian Higher Education Institute. In October, we held our first webinar about teaching creativity, and you can watch this webinar on the British Council website. Today, this is our second webinar. The topic of the webinar is assessment of students encouraged to spirit. Our webinar is held on Zoom platform and is also broadcast at the Facebook page of the British Council. I want to note that webinar participants who joined via Zoom will be granted a participation certificate after the webinar. Today, we offer you presentations from very interesting speakers who represent diverse fields of specialty. We carefully review your comments from the previous webinar, and we thank you for your feedback. Many of you noted that there is not enough expertise from speakers who represent technical disciplines. And today we offer you a combination of humanities and technical subject teachers. I hope this webinar will be useful to you and you will take away useful pieces of advice and cases that you can use in your future practice. During presentations by each speaker, you will be able to ask questions that we can pose at the end of each presentation. You are welcome to write them in the chat. Each speaker will be introduced. The first speaker is Katie Wright. She is the Deputy Director on Innovation in Education HE. This is a professional agency that works in teaching excellence in the UK. Katie also did rigorous trainings for our teachers for the second year, and we are happy to offer the opportunity to a broader audience to meet her. And if you don't know English, if you don't speak English, simultaneous interpretation is provided. So the first presentation is assessment in the context of pandemic. Katie, over to you.
Thank you very much for, oops, let me share screen. Hopefully I'm sharing screen with you now. Yes, thumbs up. Yes, can you see my screen? Yeah, thank you very much. It's great to be back with many friends that I can see on screen, and I'm sure there are many friends who are in our audience today on Zoom and maybe also on Facebook. I was asked to do a very short presentation about diversifying assessment. And in English, the phrase assessing the options is a play on words. It's about evaluating the choices we have as educators in higher education. So I'm just going to throw some ideas at you in the next 15 minutes, and I'm going to ask people to interact a little bit with the presentation through a polling tool. So what we want to do is to do some student-centered assessment approaches. But what we need to remember is that whenever we are designing assessment, it has to be linked to our planning cycle. So these are not just ideas that you can take into your practice alone. They have to be connected with what do you want your learners to know or to be able to do. how will those learners learn what you want them to do? And then the final part is, how will you know that they have learned? How will the learning be monitored? So we all have the usual tools that we use. You know, whatever discipline you teach, you go to your imaginary store cupboard, your groceries, and you pick the same brand, the same make, okay? And what we need to do is probably learn from other disciplines, learn from each other, so that we widen the number of tools that we can use. So what I'm going to ask you to do now is to hover your mobile phone. Those people on Facebook, I expect you to do this as well. I'd like you to hover your mobile phone over the screen on the QR code, and I'm asking you the question, what are your usual assessment instruments? What do you usually do? So think about that question. I'm going to move to this next slide, which will activate the poll. I'm giving you a little bit of time to go on there. There will be on the next slide the QR code again. And if you are joining through a tab on your laptop or your computer, you would go to slido.com and the code, whoa, that's quick responses. I'm very impressed by you, and it's sliding around, okay? And I think if you are putting the final answer other than the options that I've offered you, you could put those into chat so we can share and see what you are doing. So obviously the most popular answer at the moment is the top one, exams and tests. That is a disciplinary staple, and it's also a professional staple. You know, it's the thing we usually do. Multiple choice questions, essays, practical tasks, student presentations, slightly less. I'm allowing you to vote for more than one. So if you had, you know, more than one thing that you use, then please go ahead. That's brilliant. It's given me an answer that I thought would be the most frequent. Okay, that poll will stay open. So if you want to add your answers, that's absolutely fine. Thank you very much. 66 people have responded. Okay, but my question, if you think of an exam, is that assessment engaging? Is it motivating for learners? And the second question, is it realistic and is it authentic? And when we look at the principles for good assessment, which are on the screen at the moment, and apologies that they are obviously in English, the one that I want to focus on today is authentic. Good assessment is authentic. Now, what does authentic mean? Well, this is a slide from a colleague in the United Kingdom, and authenticity can relate to a future job. Does this look as though it is a task that the student would be asked when they go into a job, into the real world? Okay. Is it relevant, right? Does it do something for the good, social good, for the future? And the text that I have circled on the screen there, a good test of relevance and authenticity is, who will read or look at the assessment? If the answer is just us, the university teachers, then that's probably not authentic or relevant. Could it be seen or read or looked at by a wider group of people, in which case it would be relevant? So I'm hoping that some of the suggestions that I have for you today would be categorized as authentic and relevant to students. So there's 10 ideas, because I've only been given a short period of time, so forgive me for not going into detail. So I'm just going to run through them. So one that you probably are using, or you may well have seen, blogs. Obviously, academics are increasingly using blogs themselves to promote their research. Not many people may be going and purchasing academic journals. So what academics are doing is they're writing a summary of their research, they publish it on the internet, and people can go there to find out what they're doing. So could we use blogs as a way for students to reflect on their learning, to share the work they're doing with wider audiences? And the blogs could be public And there is at least one example of a colleague of mine who got his politics students to write blogs publicly. And there was evidence that wider audience, people like diplomats and ambassadors, were responding to what the students were saying by commenting underneath. And that gave the students a huge sense of satisfaction. It may be you don't want the blogs to be public. And most universities have a virtual learning environment like Moodle, where you could open up a blog space, a comment space, which you could open to students. So I would suggest blogs. And then podcasts as well. During the pandemic, there has been a huge number of podcasts published. I listen to them. And in some senses, they're a work of art. They are not just somebody talking, reading a text, but there's dialogue in there, there's music in there. And we could enable our students to make a podcast about their learning in a particular course or module, but be a little bit creative with that. Show them examples of commercial podcasts, which are interesting. They're not boring to listen to at all. Vodcast, screencast, student-generated videos. Most students have got smartphones, either iPhones or Android phones, which can take really good images and they can take really good video. So this is another thing that many people are using in their assessment procedures. And, you know, student-generated videos are appearing on platforms like YouTube, obviously, but also TikTok, which I know has a reputation, not a very good reputation. But what we are seeing, certainly in the United Kingdom, is that many learned societies, the Royal Society of Chemistry, for example, have opened up a TikTok channel for learning. And in the link underneath this slide that you can see on screen, there is a group from the University of York in the north of England called the Chemistry Collective. And these are a group of students who have created a TikTok channel where they are broadcasting little videos about how to do chemistry experiments and things. And in the description of their TikTok channel, they say, we are doing this for our assessment. They are actually being assessed on it by their tutors. So it's a really nice initiative and user-friendly and things. Infographics, posters. We want our students to be able to communicate, and not just to communicate in the form of essays or exams, but they need to be able to communicate digitally to different audiences. So infographics are a really great way of getting your students to show that they are understanding and can interpret data correctly. Okay. Simulations, obviously used in medicine very frequently, in healthcare, but you know, interesting, there are disciplines I would never have thought of who are using simulations and role plays and games. Accountancy was an example I came across fairly recently, where the tutor wanted the students to do an audit of a company, a pretend company, and they created these resources in a simulation, and the students had to write a report as if they were doing an audit of a commercial company. Designing and creating a set of resources so that they could be used in training in the discipline that they are learning. We all know that we learn by teaching. So if we ask our students to create and design materials that could be used in teaching, we have a good idea that they are understanding and learning from what they are doing. Debates. I am not a fan of real debates in the classroom, and the people on the Teaching Excellence programme will probably remember me saying it. But online debates have transformed my opinion of debating. And again, you could use your Moodle, your virtual learning environment, or certain platforms like Yalo, where you can have really informed debates, and you as a tutor can see who has posted, and you can use that in an assessment. So again, another form of communication about ethical issues or important issues in your discipline. Problem sets, real world data. can we give our students real world data problem sets that they could explore? I know that's very common in the scientific engineering and economics area. So, you know, real world things. And there's a video there which explains what real set data is. Things. Could they write research and business proposals? Far more interesting or far more relevant than writing an essay about a business. So again, let's have a think about those. And then to pull it all together, could they do patchwork assessments? You may well have heard of portfolios where students submit a folder, a virtual folder of lots of pieces of work. But patchwork assessment is where the students contribute different pieces of work, which are all valid and independent, like the squares that you can see on the screen there, but they knit together, they connect. So a patchwork assessment is a kind of portfolio but where all the items in there are connected, so there's meaning there. And if you're interested, there's a link on that slide that you could find out more about patchwork. And then I thought I'd show you, to finish, somebody who does all of these things. Her name is Dr. Emma Flint. She is a law practitioner at the University of Birmingham. She speaks very quickly, and I'm hoping that our lovely translators who are interpreting now have been given a copy of the text. And because she speaks so quickly, I will pause at the very end of this to give the interpreters a chance to read or to translate what she is saying. So she's talking about her work with her students in the degrees programs for law. She talks about a POW, which is a piece of work that she gets them to do and design herself. So I'm going to play now. Julia, could you give me a thumbs up if you can hear? I think I did check the box to say here, but let's try.
When you think of law, what images come to mind? Probably some dynamic barrister or solicitor type, usually from TV, or even someone married to a celebrity. Sounds cool, innovative and creative. So you'd expect the way we traditionally teach and assess university law students to match that expectation, right? Wrong. So much so that Stanford University professor Margaret Hagan has even posed this question. Why? Partly due to the fact that many law schools stick to using unseen, closed book, timed on campus exams or written courseworks involving essays and answers to problem questions. I want to disrupt legal education by challenging these more traditional assessment formats through the use of creative pedagogy and authentic assessment. So within my innovative second year law degree core module, Legal Communications, for assessment students produce a piece of work, a POW, that can be anything but an essay or problem question. The variety of POW formats produced for assessment are therefore more authentic and aligned to the real world. In 2021, students submitted blogs, podcasts, art, comics, videos, poetry, songs, stories, spoken word pieces, piece of legal design, research briefings, reports to parliamentary committees, professional legal writing options, and even Instagram and Twitter feeds. Want to know how I can make all of this come together and work in a subject like law that demands academic rigour? I can hear you asking yourself, what on earth are the marking criteria she uses for this module? How does it work? Because my legal comms module does disrupt legal education, and it does work. And I let the student work speak for itself in that respect. So hover your phone over the QR codes on this page to see 2 video POWs from previous law students, Rochelle and Jay. And if you want to know more, follow the link below to watch an extended version of this video exploring creative pedagogy, authentic assessment and the curriculum design, including the magic marking criteria underpinning the legal comms module. Happy to share materials, drop me an email. When you think of law, what images come to mind?
I'm just giving a moment for the translators to keep up. I set a very strict time limit to academics to record something in 1 minute, so she spoke very quickly. I will be back at the end of this session because Julia has kindly offered me a chance just to say goodbye to you and final message. So I'm going to open a Slido poll, which I'd like you to fill in after you've heard from the fantastic Olga and Mariam, who are going to follow me, because they will have lots of ideas too. So maybe we could make a beautiful word cloud of ideas that you've thought of that make assessment more engaging, more motivating, more interesting for students. And when you've heard from Olga and Mariam, then, sorry, my llama, I've just finished on time. And then we can have a look at the word cloud at the very end to see how things have gone. Thank you very much.
Дякую, Кеті, за цікаву презентацію.
Thank you, Katie, for your exciting presentation. Don't go far away because we will have questions. We have some questions. Thank you for your comments. All your comments and questions we are reading very carefully. We have a number of questions about certificates, about video recordings, and the certificates will be emailed to you or mailed. And now to your questions for Katie. Katie, what programs, software programs are you using for online debates?
Okay, the program is called Kialo. I will put the web link into the chat for you. You have to get your students to register on Kialo, but it is free. And I think, Olga and Mariam, you might have used Kialo, you're familiar with it. I've also used WhatsApp or Telegram for a debate, right? Or Moodle virtual learning environments. If you are assessing what the students are writing for debate, I would suggest you use a platform like Kialo or your Moodle site. I would only use Telegram for very short informal debates. Okay?
Дякую. Кеті, і ще запитання.
Thank you, Katie. One more question. In our opinion, there is a system or do you think that the distance teaching and learning is better than offline teaching?
Sorry, Jane, going to check that I've understood the question. Do I think that online teaching is better than face-to-face teaching? Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
No, well, yes and no. I've always thought of myself as a face-to-face teacher. I've always found that I like to be in the room with people because you can read the room. You can see people's faces. You can adjust your activities. I find that much more difficult online because when people go into a breakout room, I don't know whether they've had too much time, too little time. In a classroom, I know immediately. I can see, I can hear the noise of the class as they're talking. So there are a lot of problems and challenges with online teaching that I don't face when I'm in the classroom with people. However, I have learned over the last year and a half that online learning can be effective. And I hope that the colleagues who are on this call will be able to say, yes, we worked brilliantly together. They did fantastic work. And I learned a lot. They were the people, I mean, Olga was in the very, very first group that I taught online. I learned so much from working with her group. And that enabled me to progress my practice as a teacher. I have improved as a result of this experience. And when we go back to face-to-face teaching, I will take a lot of the learning, a lot of the techniques with me into the classroom.
Дякую. І наступне запитання досить важке.
Thank you. And the next question is quite challenging. Is there a practice in the UK higher education system to involve employers to developing the content of assessment tasks?
sorry, again, I'm going to check. Is there a program in the UK which enables academic...
Is there practice
Yes.
to engage, to involve employers into the formation of their tasks and exams?
Yes.
To make them like professionally oriented.
Okay, I understand now. Thank you very much. Yes. Most universities are very, very aware of the issue of employability. Universities in the UK are measured on the number of students that get professional jobs. There is a league table. So universities have to involve employers in their courses. So many universities have got employer representation, particularly on professional courses. Okay. I would also say, however, that this is not just about jobs. Education is not just about jobs. We want people to become fulfilled citizens, positive citizens in their society, in their group. And it's not just about, hopefully they get a good job, but that's not the only point of education. And therefore, I think universities should be developing soft skills, communication skills, because those work for whatever environment, at home, in relationships, in work. Okay, so the answer is yes, there is involvement. It is up to each university to involve employers in their programs.
Дякую і за ваші запитання також, і за відповіді Кеті. На жаль, ми не можемо...
Thank you for your questions and to Katie for her answers. Unfortunately, we don't have enough time to ask all these questions, so we will move forward. And if we have any time left, we will return to the questions. Our next speaker is Olga Yashenkova, Associate Professor at the Department of English Philology and Intercultural Communication of Tarasa Shevchenko University. Olga was a participant in the first year of Teaching Excellence Program, and this year she joined the facilitators team. The topic of your presentation is over to you. Just a moment, I'm going to share my screen. The theme of the presentation is Assessment in Distance Learning, Practical Life Hacks.
Зараз нормально чи так само?
Завантажується. Зараз чекаємо. Так.
Да?
Now that's fine.
Добре, дякую. Вітаю.
Thank you. Good afternoon, colleagues. I'm happy to present the outcomes of my work on assessment in distance learning. It's no secret that now we are in exam period with tests, past post exams and traditional exams. Could you please write a couple of words or phrases in the chat on your exam sessions? I invite you to look at these pictures. Are you feeling like this or like this? Or maybe you are very happy and satisfied. The most popular word is stress in the chat. Well, it's not surprising. Actually, when we are talking about end of semester or final assessment with exams and tests, they are always associated with stress, and not only in teachers, but students as well, all participants of teaching and learning. Now we continue to work online. We have to arrange online tests and exams. Although the procedures usually remain the same, like we worked offline, but is the online test or exam is a traditional test, for example, when we change the procedure. So we asked our students whether they feel any difference between exams that take place offline, although the structure and the exam questions remain the same. Half of the students reported that they couldn't see any difference, but 33% wrote that such exam or test creates more tension compared to offline one, and 17% noted that they feel less confident than usually when exam takes place in offline room. And no one wrote that online exam is better than offline exam. So people do face challenges. And now I want to ask the group to think of these three questions. Have you implemented any changes at your universities? Do you use non-traditional assessment techniques, or you use mainly traditional exams and tests? And I asked our technical support professionals to show my questions. I also encourage you to think about involving students to assessment. Do you involve them? And if you do, what is the proportion of teachers' mark and students' mark? I can see some of the answers coming. I can see the questions posted on the screen, and now I ask our participants to vote quickly.
Скажіть, будь ласка, чи є у нас вже результати голосування?
Do we have voting results, at least preliminary ones? Can we see them? First, traditional example, test, students' oral answer. The findings were more or less expected, but it is satisfying to see that there are colleagues at universities who combine traditional and innovative assessment strategies. We are also moving towards changes in assessment. And I believe it would be interesting to compare the voting results of teachers with students' answers. We asked our students if they had a choice, what form of assessment they would prefer. And now you see there is no unanimity here. 38% prefer written tests, 27% are for a combination of traditional and non-traditional techniques, approximately the same portion. 26% prefer non-traditional assessment, and around 9% prefer a combination of non-traditional, prefer a combination of traditional oral example and written test. It will be interesting to read students' comments because many of them replied that a final assessment or summative assessment was necessary, and they wrote that In my opinion, it would be better if students would get their marks without any exams or tests to avoid creating stress for students. And one more group of students believe that a teacher or professor should use a diversity of assessment formats because students are different, they have different needs, capabilities, and interests, and this should be taken into account. Besides, students replied to questions whether they should be involved to assessment of learning and to what extent. All of them believe yes, that it was advisable, but this article shows that the majority believe that the professor or teacher is the main person to assess learning outcomes. 56% believe that the proportion should be 30% of self-assessment or student assessment when they assess each other, and 70% of marks should be down to the teachers, and they explain why. One of the reasons is that they believe they don't have enough knowledge and competencies, and they don't have assessment skills, and they cannot adequately assess themselves and others. They also noted that although it is challenging to give a fair assessment to oneself and others, but it is important to because it develops critical thinking and professional competencies. So we are moving forward to changes. Traditional assessment strategies. Why are they necessary? Because a traditional test, for example, is something that is very customary to students. That's why it doesn't spark interest and they don't make an effort to pass or write a test well. Students are not very engaged and quite often we see cribbing. Another fault is cramming. Usually traditional assessment forms check knowledge, and when the student passes, they tend to forget what they have learned. Next downside is a lack of skills to apply learning to practice. Besides, it is the teacher or professor who dictates the forms and types of assessment activities. And as consequences, he or she fails to take into account individual students' needs and capabilities. Also, the final mark or the final score is given by the teacher, and this means that students don't develop skills for reflection and self-analysis. Therefore, they don't know how to adequately assess themselves or their peers. What to do when we have uninteresting test assignments? What do we do about it? Switch on creativity and give unexpected assessment activities. When we have cribbing, what do we do? Offer an exam with open book or notes. Students are not motivated. They say that they not use theory. It's a typical situation. What to do? We can promise a bonus mark to those who can provide a creative explanation of why theory is necessary. So we engage students actively to assessment process, and you are in for surprise at their creativity. You are bound to be surprised to see that students who fail to attend lectures or workshops will present interesting projects and pieces of work, and they will be able to take part in assessment in partnership with the teacher. So let's take risk and experiment together with students and develop assessment forms and activities for tests on exams that will check knowledge, but also the skills to apply theoretical knowledge, to practice soft skills, communicative skills, creativity, problem-solving skills, digital skills, and many others. So, since I was teaching theoretical disciplines in this September on theory of language communication, I started thinking, how do I assess whether my students mastered this theory? Because I'm interested to see them passing the test. And I came up with the project. I created a list of theoretical questions based on my lectures. I have 58 students, so I offered 118 questions for each student to get to. I used random pour. I mixed questions and groups and names of the students, so eventually each student got their questions, their assessment assignment, and here you can see each group received this list. I use Google Class to send this assignment. The assignment included, for example, review different sources and compile a bibliography for each theoretical question. Then study these resources and prepare a video or poster on these two topics. And students were free to choose a topic to which they wanted to create a video or post. Additionally, students were supposed to develop a quiz that could be held online using Google Forms or Quizzes.com or another website platform. And in order to support students and provide them guidance, I shared the assessment criteria. Video and poster, the quiz should be in line with the given theoretical questions. The students should present theoretical knowledge and in line with language rules. And speaking about video and posters, I were expected to use different skills of influencing the audience, such as rhetorical questions and others. I suggested that they publish their pieces of work on Padlet. They also publish their videos on YouTube because the FPA noted they were interested to present their pieces of work to a larger audience, not just their teacher or peer students. We were curious to see how many likes they could gather. After the students published their pieces of work on Padlet, everyone was able to review these works, listen or read them, and they had to assess each work and write comments or provide feedback to the completed assignment. After that, we analyzed the work together at the final assessment session. We came together as one group to discuss strong and weak that required some improvement. I provided feedback as teacher and lecturer. What I received as a result when I collected feedback from my students in my course, they were very interesting. Students who didn't attend lectures wrote, "It was great to use theoretical knowledge in practice." Someone wrote that it was the first time that they had created a poster, a video, and in the process of working on this project, they were learning a lot. Also, they found it unexpected to create a poster or video instead of traditional assessment. and this helps to develop their digital skills and learn more about basics of effective presentation and effective content. They thank for the opportunity for self-assessment and for peer assessment. Another course that I delivered was entitled Business Communication. And I designed a project that is relevant to business realities. I'm titled What We Can Learn from Business. This project included the following stages. Each student was expected to take an interview from a business person. We agreed that should explain the purpose and objective of this interview, and without indicating the name of the company or the business person, to enable an open and honest conversation. They could use Zoom or a different online platform to interview the respondent.
Чи вплинула пандемія?
It was interesting to see whether pandemic had an impact on communication within the company, and students had to learn which knowledge and skills are required for a successful business person in different sectors. After they collected all this information, they had to fill out a form which included a section with reflection. So they analyzed the information they received and then used it to prepare a pitch or a brief presentation of what they have learned or what they can learn from business. This was followed by a self-assessment form that included assessment of the product, the pitch, and the process. The process of creating this product when they took an interview, when they analyzed, reflected what was challenging and whether they have addressed these challenges successfully. Then they publish their pitches on YouTube and Padlet, and there appears raw comments, same as the teacher or the professor. So students wrote it that this activity was very useful. 62 agreed with this statement. Nobody said that it was inappropriate, irrelevant, or unnecessary. They wrote that it was a very interesting experience. I found this comment very interesting. The girl wrote that she has never communicated with a business lady or businessman, so she had to go to a shop near your place and ask for an interview. It was interesting to see that the business people were forthcoming and they agreed to give an interview. A lot of feedback was very positive. One of the students wrote, I wouldn't want to do anything on my own, but this all has taught me a lot. So during these activities, the students continued to learn and to acquire their knowledge and skills. To summarize, I want to encourage everyone to change our assessment practice. I believe that traditional test or exam should be replaced by authentic assessment activities or projects that are relevant for real life and that culminate in an actual product. It can then motivate students to learn. I would encourage you to replace cribbing and memorize text with assessment that can check not just knowledge, but also skills to apply this knowledge in completing relevant tasks. I suggest to move away from teacher's choice or lecturer's choice to offering choice to the student as well, to choose how to complete an activity or assignment in to a reasonable degree, of course. But if a student has such a choice, it helps us to consider his individual needs and capabilities, reveal their individual potential. Teacher's assessment should include not just assessment by the teacher, but also self-assessment and peer assessment. This is something that we should also teach because these skills are very useful for students. And I encourage you to keep in mind that it is important to combine different forms of assessment. Engage students to developing assessment criteria and to self-assessment, to peer assessment process. I encourage you to stimulate feedback from students and use information received from students to improve the process of outcomes assessment. Because this information is invaluable to a teacher. It is also very important to provide a timely, descriptive feedback for students, not just good job or a mark, but to outline a direction that students can move forward to become a good professional. And one final thing to remember is that summative assessment or test, for example, is not the destination. It is another chance for students to communicate with professors and lecturers, to share their experiences and continue to improve. Thank you for your attention. If you have any questions, I will be happy to answer them. This is my email. You're welcome to write to me. I'm available on various social networks, on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, and others. And I encourage you to share your experience. I'm convinced that you have many good practices that you can share with me. Thank you, Olga. Really, we are receiving a lot of questions and comments, and I hope that you will be able to answer some of them in the chat, because some of the questions were very specific and related to organizing these different types of assessment. Unfortunately, we are behind our schedule. That's why I would like to pose one very short question. How we can consider individual characteristics of students in the context of assessment? Because we say that assessment should be equal and fair for each student. It's a very good question, and I spoke on this in my presentation a bit. First of all, when we provide a choice for students, a choice of activities in assessment, choice of topics, and the ways to complete an activity, because we know that people are different. Everyone is unique and everyone has their own special needs or capabilities. And if you offer just one single assessment assignment for one topic, it may fail to help students demonstrate their potential, their talent. That's why I find the diversity of different forms and activities helpful. Thank you. We will be moving forward. While Olga was speaking, we received a number of questions how this may be used in the context of technical disciplines. And I replied that I asked people to wait because our next speaker will be speaking just about that. Maria Slavinoga is the speaker from Ivano-Frankivsk National Technical University of Oil and Gas. He participates in the second year of the Teaching Excellence Program. And the theme of his presentation is Bicycle Reinventors Club, how to assess future IT professionals. Good afternoon. I hope you can hear me and see my screen.
Я скажу буквально пару слів.
So, Yulia has informed you about the topic. A few words about myself. 10 years ago, I graduated in the specialty computer systems and networks. Now it's called computer engineering. After graduation, I became a postgraduate student and worked as a teaching associate and supervised hands-on studies by students. Why did we choose this name, Bicycle Reinventors? Many IT professionals say that all programming consists of two things. First of all is reinventing the wheel or bicycles or writing things that have been written thousands of times or many years ago and was implemented and realized other software developers before us. And looking for temporary. Why this issue is being raised? Because in the current realities of software development, many assignments and activities have been completed, and you can use the technical documentation or Google to find a solution to many trivial tasks of software development and solution to technical tasks. I surveyed some of the lecturers when preparing this presentation, and it seems that now there is very little of actual programming, as this tweet shows. Most often it's internet search, then inserting the solution into your code and removing the mistakes and then getting the final product. This is what programming looks like today. So earlier we can say that in 1960s, software developers kept a lot of stuff in their heads. They worked with data media, and it would seem that such work was unfeasible. But today, software developers, when they are deprived of internet access to Google or Stack Overflow, which is a great developers forum and contains answers to any questions related to working with standard programs. Current software developers are no developers compared to giants and monsters who built what we describe now as computer technology or computer hardware in 90s, in 60s or 70s of the previous century. Is it bad that current software developers cannot be as strong and keep everything in their head and write the code from their head, to keep everything at their fingertips, as they say in English? It's just a reality that we need to reconcile with, because when we say that current developers are helpless without internet. We should first of all consider the variety of fields that use digital products. If 40 or 30 years ago software development was the privilege of technical enthusiasts or academics or engineers employed at large firms, today each of us has 2 or 3 digital devices at hand, or if we try to count them at our place, we may fail. The same applies to technology. When we had a training day during the final iteration of the teaching excellence program, we discussed the TikTok videos, how they can be integrated into assessment, and we also discussed the notorious TikTok faculty. I noted that there was a concern I had regarding the TikTok faculty, because before TikTok, 2 years before that, there were other products like Varing that no one can remember today. So just within these 2 years, the audience has changed, and now we see the distribution of different social and age groups that use specific technologies and platforms. The amount of technical specification and documentation is huge, and it is impossible to keep it in your head. The audience of digital programs has increased from professors and teaching engineers to any user practically, including children, that your product should be accessible to. And if earlier you were required to communicate and share experience, but it was not very active. But today, the time is running up when single enthusiasts write or create a project and sell their startup to other large agencies that have the capacity to handle the scale with its large audience. The same is relevant for the structure of the teams. Today we have huge numbers of people working on a project, and they need to find a consensus for development questions. And although development standards are important, they should observe elements of good style that a competent person will understand, and which will help him or her use your code just by reading the documentation. Why is this issue relevant today for IT professors? Because the current situation in the Ukrainian market is such that we have a lack of human resources, and the best students find employment in their third, fourth, or even second year of bachelor studies, and they combine work and studies, and this is how they are learning to work. And probably we cannot address it on our own as university, because the generation of students are coming who are looking for a side income, and they want to have this side income related to their future profession, and this is completely right. But our task in this respect is to make sure that they don't miss all these things that are related to thorough and rigor training in computer sciences and computer engineering in a situation when they are required to use just basic skills in the initial job. Many students now understand that listening to lectures about digital automatic machinery is not very interesting when they can just create a piece of work and earn some cash with it. But when they are faced with a question of career development and progression, they go back to the things that they could have learned 5 years ago, and they resume their studies. Therefore, our objective is to encourage students to combine these two processes. And actually, the question, and I also saw it reflected in the chat form, is that many tasks are trivial. You won't write a programming assignment on using cycles in a different way that excludes using cycles. Algorithmic operation using databases, all this is available online. So any students equipped with internet access can find an answer to any task that we set to him or her on trivial programming. Here I am speaking about everything from classical tasks, IT tasks and functions to website development, database development. They have all of this and they know where to get it. So do we need to punish them for such solutions, for taking a non-unique code, copying it from internet, and so forth? I believe it shouldn't, because this is how the industry works. And reinventing something when a ready-made solution is available, it is not a widely accepted practice in current IT area. Because why spend time on something that is already well written, tried and tested by many developers, and on the other hand, why inventing own approaches that would be completely different just to demonstrate how original you are? If this code cannot be read by other people, other developers, and will not be well received because this code is written not in compliance with elements of good style. Therefore, I designed this algorithm for myself. First of all, when we give a software development assignment, I provide access to all documents on Moodle course at our university's platform, where all documents required for the activity are published, and I give an example of the solution. If students don't want to read forum comments to find a solution, or they may fail to find the right answer. For example, Stack Overflow is a resource where students or users have to ask questions in a correct way in English. Not all students in their first or second year studies have adequate English skills. Where we provide a variability, space for variability. How do we judge whether the assignment was completed or not? We give a list of commands, tools, and technologies that are required to be used. So we assess using dry approaches that confirm students' eligibility to defend their product. Also, we use the we assess the correctness of the solution as a black box. Those students who demonstrated good progress at secondary school and who participated in software development competition for school students, they are aware that the technical requirements should be observed. If the program is well written, but it doesn't launch, but or it uses expected input but doesn't generate expected output, the mark is 0. So we need to make sure that the expected input produces the expected output. The same applies to many technological computation. I consulted with our technology professionals and they use the same approaches. So what do we assess and how do we assess? We assess students' competence in the algorithm of solving a standard task. And speaking about software development, we assess their knowledge of syntax. As I noted before, my principle is I don't care where people get this code, but they should take responsibility for every line of this code. And the second point, I assess the students' competence in the variativity of this code. If they change this or that here or there, what would be the forecasted outcome? It will help understand how the student is familiar with the algorithm, that they just copy and paste. And it is also worthy of recognition. Let me describe the structure of assessment later. I need to see whether students understand this solution and whether they can use it to create something bigger, something different. What do we encourage to assess additionally or to praise the students and give it extra scores? First of all, a solution that moves beyond the standard solution or a range of standard solutions. And if a student has used something that was not included into the 0 option, I ask them to explain why. And during an interview, I can see how they develop their solution. Besides, I'm interested in the observance of elements of good style of the programming language. It's not soft skills. Or rather soft skills related to preparing technical specifications that is part of the ready-made product. And the typical structure of assessment in my courses. I give tests or quizzes with open-ended questions, closed questions, matching questions that are enabled by model. I give hands-on assignments, and usually these assignments consist of 3 parts. First part is 3 to 5 test questions to ensure that students are eligible to defend their work. 30% of this assignment is the report on the completed assignment, and 40% of assessment mark is given for defending their product. To get a higher mark on hands-on assignments, students have to defend their work, and they do it based on the assessment criteria. Also, I try to make sure that all series of hands-on assignments revolve around one theme and eventually culminate into a holistic project.
Всім прожужжав вуха, хоча насправді не такий він вже й великий. Я, користуючись цим, просто кажу студентам, скільки аналогічна робота буде коштувати, якщо вони виконають, наприклад, таке замовлення для когось.
And as a motivation, I give the students figures of what they can earn when they present it to employer. Eventually, I use website development or database development for testing students. I borrowed this practice from our IT cluster. I encourage other students to ask questions during the defense session. For example, why was this done in this way and this look good? Could you please explain how you arrived at the solution? This is a compulsory element. And the final controversial issue, to sum up, to give you some food for thought after our session today. Do we need to reduce the score for inaccurate handwriting? When assignment has been completed, it performs ideally. Student is well versed in the code, but it is evident that students have compiled this work by borrowing elements from 3 different sites. There are no comments, and this is how it looks like. This is a question for discussion. I thank you for your attention. I hope I stayed within my time frame. If you have any additional questions, these are my contacts. Thank you, Marianne. Actually, we don't have any questions at the moment, but we do have comments on how these assessment strategies can be used in other disciplines, and also words of thanks. I understand that we are behind our schedule. I hope that you can stay with us for some more time. I wanted to ask our speakers, why do you think it is necessary to change our approaches to student assessment? Would it be easier to pursue the same practices that we used 10 or 20 years ago, because they require less time, less preparation to invent things? Why do you think that it is important to make any changes? First of all, I want to ask Katie to answer this question.
Thank you. Okay. The way we teach has changed from 30 years ago. We all aim to be student-centered. In other words, we want the experience of our students to be at the center of everything that we do. We also want to equip students to live in the modern world. That is not an exam, as we used to, does not equip people to live in the modern world. So yes, it involves a little bit more effort, but ultimately we get more engagement and more motivation from our students by changing our assessment methods. So we don't still use an old-fashioned ink and quill to write. We have computers now. Things change, and we need to evolve with those changes. I don't know if Olga or Marian want to add anything.
Дякую, Кеті. Пані Ольга, на вашу думку, чому необхідно змінювати?
Olga, what do you think? Why assessment approaches should be changed in education? I agree with Katie. Really, in the 21st century, we teach and assess differently, but changes in assessment are very important in my view, because they guide us how we should change our teaching, because they help identify our weak points, to see which teaching strategies, which teaching activities work better. It is also necessary to motivate students. to make sure that they don't lose this desire to improve. Naturally, I'm not saying that we need to move away from everything that we had before. I believe that it is possible to combine good traditional strategies with new things. I encourage you to view students as partners. You see, if we approach this from this perspective, it is really important to make. Thank you, Olga. And now I address the same question to Marianne. Probably in the IT area, we feel that if you stop somewhere, you may just close your eyes, open them, and find yourself lagging far behind. Just moving on and changing regularly means that you keep in step with the times. And in order to be in advance of the time, you need to be more proactive and invest more effort. Just by seeing how generations of students are changing, and how their perceptions of higher education and their future careers are changing, how they want to start their careers. And first of all, it would be dishonest to yourself and then a crime to our students if you fail to be in step with these changes. Thank you, Marianne. Thank you to all participants who have been with us during these webinars. Today, we discussed how to use different assessment forms with students, how to adapt your assessment format and to the needs of different specialities such as humanities students, IT students, technical students. If you have any questions or some of the things that you want to learn more, you are welcome to write to our speakers because they share their contact details in social network and on their PowerPoints. The video of this webinar will be published on our Facebook page and on the British Council website. We will email the link to the video and a brief questionnaire. We ask you to fill it out to help us improve our events in future. Besides, we will mail the certificates to all the participants. And also let me remind you that in February we will have the next webinar on modern approach into teaching. And it will be dedicated to using technologies in teaching. We will also offer a group of interesting speakers. Do get involved.